What's up, everybody? So, with ICC around the corner, I wanted to answer some questions that I've seen a lot of people asking about Shadow, just to try to clear the air, explain everything about Shadow Priest and ICC. It's not going to be talking about the bosses specifically, that'll be in another video, but just if you have questions about, what talents we're going to use, how we're going to scale, that type of stuff, this is the video for you. I just want to put all of these answers into one solid video that pretty much has everything that you're looking for. So, hopefully, this is the video for you. All right, without further ado, let's get into it. So the first question I have is our tier 10 set any good? The short answer is yeah, it's really freaking good. Our two piece is pretty decent. It increases the critical strike chance of our dots by 5%, which is nice. On single target, it's about 200 DPS. And, obviously the more targets that you have dots on simultaneously, the higher that number is going to be. But when it comes to our four piece, that's like insanely strong. That really puts Shadow on the map in terms of our single target ability. So our four piece reduces the channel time of our Mind Flay, which basically you just kind of feel like you're machine gunning Mind Flays off. It's going to be a lot of fun to play with. And it's about a 1,000 to 1,200 DPS increase. So once you get it, your DPS is going to shoot up a ton, which is going to be awesome. So yeah, our tier 10 set is going to be amazing and really put Shadow Priest on the map in terms of our single target damage, which we haven't been on that map at all in Wrath. So this is going to be a lot of fun and we're going to scale really well this phase. So now number two is, it's not really a question that I've seen, but it's kind of something I want to answer anyway, which is how can I get better at casting Mind Flay? Because with the tier 10 4 piece, Mind Flay becomes an even larger portion of our overall damage. It's just we're going to be casting it more often, so which means we get more casts of it per fight. And we want to make sure we're casting as many as possible because, again, the problem with this spell is that unless you're using a no channeling macro, which you shouldn't be using anyway, you cannot queue a spell into it. And even then you can't queue it, but we don't need to get into the technicalities. It's just, we want to be able to cast as many as possible. So there's this awesome Weakaura that's going to show you the downtime of when your Mind Flay ends and then when you go to cast your next spell. And since you need to wait for that final tick to occur before you can cast your next spell, at least to maximize your own damage, you want to make sure that you're minimizing that amount of time. So this Weakaura will show you what that amount of time is and just allow you to practice on a target dummy, or you can watch it in a raid and see how good you are, during a boss fight in like TOGC or even like Vault of Archivon or something, and how good you are at reducing that time between your Mind Flay and whatever spell comes next. So I'd highly recommend getting this, going to a target dummy and practicing. Maybe get a shaman friend who can drop a haste totem and give you a lust, just so that you can practice with the different haste values and really simulate a fight even though you're on a target dummy. So now, is Shadow good in ICC for the fights specifically, not just talking about gear scaling? So yeah, I think Shadow is extremely good for the fights in ICC. Now, from a damage profile, yes. From like a utility, not particularly. So really the fight that I'm thinking about most is Lich King, because anybody who's been progressing the raid on PTR knows that the first 11 fights are actually a joke compared to Lich King. Now they are still challenging in their own rights, but Lich King is on a whole nother level. So when we're talking about this raid and basically any class that can like cheese mechanics because of their abilities, it really comes down to Lich King. Hunters and Warlocks are really the winners in that regard. So those are going to be the classes that like the world first progression races are stacking. You might have a Shadow in the raid, you might not. I think Shadow is still very good from a damage profile perspective, but it just doesn't offer you anything that allows you to ignore mechanics, which is really what you're looking for in that comp. That being said, especially as we gear up and, for any guild that's not in like the top 5, top 10 world progression, Shadow is going to be a great class to bring. So don't worry about that too much. Just because the world first guild isn't doing it doesn't mean your guild shouldn't either. That's not how this works. But Shadow is going to be really good from a damage profile, especially as we get our tier, which really fixes our main issue with our single target. And then you'll just be an extremely competitive DPS if you're not already. So it just kind of depends on your guild and the skill level of you and the people you play with. But Shadow is going to be extremely good, especially once we get our tier. But even before, pretty decent in ICC. So now, is the Dispersionless spec real? Now, this is something that if you're not aware, I'll put the talent tree up on the screen, that takes some points out of Shadow and puts them into the disc tree, because on a single target sim, this actually does increase our damage by about 200 to 300 DPS in full ICC BIS. Now, this is something that doesn't work in current gear. In current gear, it's a DPS loss to use this spec, so you definitely don't want to be doing it then. But even in ICC, like, do I want to be running this next week on progression? Hell no, because dispersion is way too important on progression to go without. Now, do you need it on any fight? Technically, no. It does help. But, especially on progression, things aren't going to always be super clean. People are going to make mistakes, and it's just nice to have that button for that oh shit moment when you can save yourself if things are just going wrong. Now, when will this spec actually be used, if at all? Speed killing bosses because you just want as much damage as possible. If you're going for like 100 parse, you'd probably use it. That's probably it. I don't know that you'd ever use it in a speed running scenario. I'm not sure about that. We're still a little bit too far away to know that for certain. I think this spec is mostly a meme, but if you're trying to parse at the end of the phase in full abyss, that's pretty much the only time that you're going to want to use this. Now, do I still cast Mind Blast? So I have a whole video talking about this and talking about Weakaura that will actually do the math for you and tell you when you do and do not want to cast Mind Blast. So go check that out because you should be watching my videos anyway. So if you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's a great video. But the thing I'll say about that is once we get our tier 10 4-piece, it'll be about 50% of the time we do cast Mind Blast and the other 50% we don't. So again, there are Weakauras I can tell you when not to. And even if you do to like maintain replenishment, it's not a huge DPS loss. So it doesn't feel too bad casting it. So don't worry about that too much. It's still pretty minor in terms of the DPS loss for casting it anyway. Now, what happened to casting Shadow or Death? Wasn't this part of our rotation at some point? It was. And it kind of, I don't even know what the DPS is right now, but like there's been this weird scenario where if you have like a GCD or less before you need to refresh a dot, it was better to cast a Shadow or Death instead of a 2-tick Mind Flay, and then refresh your dots. And I think even now in current gear, it might be like 20 or 30 DPS if you do this optimally. The thing is, if you do it suboptimally, you're going to lose a lot more damage than you gain, which is why I've pretty much told people to just not cast this as part of the normal rotation, but just save it for when you're moving. And this is going to be especially even more true in ICC because our Mind Flay becomes so much stronger that, when we think of a 2-tick Mind Flay, it's probably going to be, it could even be less than a GCD at some points during haste or with increased haste. So Shadow or Death, again, it's just a pure movement ability. Save it for when you're running to something. And then after you Shadow or Death, use Devouring Plague if you're still running. So it's just a nice spell to have because it deals a decent amount of damage on the move. Now, what items do I prio in ICC? So this is, again, a video that I've already made talking about our BIS list. Really, you want to focus on the trinkets. The trinkets are insanely strong, starting with Phylactery of the Nameless Lich, followed by Dislodged Foreign Object. After that, the single best item, and I mean, this is actually better than Dislodge Foreign Object from a pure DPS standpoint, the Mace from Heroic Lich King. But the fact that it's from Heroic Lich King means it could take a while before a lot of guilds can actually get this item, which is why I'm not sure I'd recommend prioritizing it high. Now, you probably already have your prio list done, so if you did put this item high, hopefully you're killing Lich King early. But if you're not, then, I think the 277 weapons are still really strong. Obviously not as good as this mace, but there are some staves and there's a one-hander from Marrowgar, I think, that casters would probably be wanting. So those weapons, again, are still insanely strong. They're still 19 item levels higher than current tier BIS. So, it's not the end of the world if you can't get this weapon early. So now one question actually about me is, why haven't I been streaming? So for the last 2 weeks, I really haven't been streaming at all. I've just had some stuff going on in my personal life that I've had to take care of. And actually, I'm going to be streaming a ton coming up with this next patch. So pretty much starting on Tuesday, I'm going to be spamming Gamma Dungeons for like 8 to 10 hours a day for every day. And I'll be streaming pretty much from Tuesday until the following Monday every single day. So if you want to come hang out, I'll probably be starting, I don't know, around 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which works really well for you EU folks. So that'll probably be around 6 to 7 p.m. your time. Because I know a lot of you have caught me streaming when it's like 3 to 4 a.m. your time, and I always feel pretty bad about that. So I just want to throw that out there. I'll be streaming a ton starting next week, so come hang out. I'll just be doing dungeons, so if you want to do dungeons with me, whether you're on Benediction or even Gehenna's for when I do my EU characters, would love to join some of you in some Gamma dungeons. And then finally, talking about streaming, I do have a new channel that's going to be entirely dedicated to VODs. I forget what it's like Pants Gaming VODs and streams or something. I'll put the title up on the screen so you can see it, and a link in the video description. But if you want to catch VODs, if you don't like watching them on Twitch because I'm no longer streaming on YouTube, then I will be uploading all VODs to this channel. So hopefully you enjoy that if you enjoy watching the VODs. Anyway, that's all I got for you in this video. I hope this was helpful. And again, post anything in the comments that you think I didn't cover, because chances are if you have a question, somebody else probably has that same question. I will be doing a Shadow Priest specific guide to all the fights, like another parsing guide, probably in the next week or two. I don't know if I'll have it done before the raid actually launches, and I think hopefully, but if not, then just know it'll be coming out soon after. Anyway, that's all I got for you in this video. My name is Fanspace, and I'll see you in the next one.